The history of cinema is one that is so short, so that it can be told through instantaneous plot points. Yet, with the early days of the cinema of attractions and the silent era, it's a tad different. Edward Muybridge and his infamous horse bet happened in 1872. Then 19 years later, Edison and William Kennedy Laurie Dixon started shooting in the Black Maria, followed closely by the Lumiere brothers in 1895 with their first theatrical presentation. The last decade of the 19th century was dominated by Edison and Lumiere, as others tried to quickly catch up. Yet at the turn of the century, the number of prominent filmmakers grew exponentially. Georges Méliès was one of them, most notably with his infamous A Trip to the Moon. Méliès was extremely influential within the realm of convincing audiences that the cinema, at its core, was pure magic. Martin Scorsese was so influenced by the director that Scorsese's 2012 movie Hugo has Méliès as a prominent character. In 1903, however, Edwin S. Porter made a film called The Life of the American Fireman, and with it came a surge forward in narrative editing. While Méliès had figured out editing tricks like double exposure, Porter realized that you could tell the same story from different vantage points to deepen the audience's interest in the picture. The Life of the American Fireman is a simple story of firefighters saving a woman from a burning building, but it's how it's told that makes it so important. The first part of the movie is told from the woman's perspective inside the house as the firefighters come to save her. Porter then rewinds the story and moves the camera down to the level of the firefighters outside the house, and we watch what they see. While there are some goofs, as in there's no possible way that a staircase could be placed there, given the look of the house, it still is bounds and leaps ahead of what others were doing, and it's an editing trick that virtually every movie uses today. From 1903 to 1915, Méliès and Porter continued to make short movies that played at little Nickelodeons all over the country. Nickelodeons were meant for working class people though, and no upper class socialite would ever be caught dead in one. Even Hugo Munsterberg, the father of film theory, opens his most famous book discussing how much willpower it took to finally go see a movie there. But in 1915, D.W. Griffith would change all of that with one movie, The Birth of a Nation. Arguably one of the most controversial movies, The Birth of a Nation can be succinctly put as a positive reconsideration of the KKK. The content is dated, but the impact it had on moviegoing can still be seen today. While other films of the time were anywhere from 1 to 30 minutes, Griffith's mammoth of a movie was 3.5 hours long, with an intermission. Other films of the time were subject to whatever the house piano player wanted to play while accompanying the movie. Griffith wrote a score for the piece that was to be played wherever his movie went. The movie went on to gross more than $60 million at the box office, a number that was almost unheard of at the time. The Birth of a Nation is a movie that is continually debated as to whether or not it should be included in the film studies canon, if we should separate art from its own content, but there is no doubt the movie had an enormous impact on cinema. While all of this was going on in the United States, cinema was hatching all across the world too. The French avant-garde, the German expressionists, and most importantly, the Soviet school of cinema. A sweeping generalization, but arguably true, no group has contributed more to cinema than the early Soviets. Dziga Vertov, Kuleshov, and Sergei Eisenstein were three of the most important members of that school. Kuleshov, some might wrongly call a one-trick pony, discovered what has been called the Kuleshov effect, and while I could try to explain it, I'll take a break and have Hitchcock explain it.
Now we have a close-up, then we show what he sees. Let's assume he saw a woman holding a baby in her arms. Now we cut back to his reaction to what he sees, and he smiles. Now what is he as a character? He's a kindly man. He's sympathetic. Now, let's take the middle piece of film away, the woman with the child, but leave his two pieces of film as they were. Now we'll put in a piece of film of a girl in a bikini. He looks, girl in a bikini, he smiles. What is he now? The dirty old man.
Dziga Vertov was extremely influential in the art of non-fiction documentary filmmaking. His biggest movie, The Man with the Movie Camera, follows a cinematographer around the streets of Russia, filming a city symphony that would go on to influence other city symphonies, and even the Koyaanisqatsi masterpiece. The most famous of them all, Eisenstein, is most noted for his invention, or better yet, discovery, of the montage. The montage takes Porter's idea of vantage point to the next level, as we're getting these vantage points in real time instead of in blocks, condensing a large story sequence into an abbreviated scene. In the famous Odessa Steppe sequence from Battleship Potemkin, these ideas culminate. As the villagers are trying to escape the soldiers by running down the steps, we catch glimpses of everyone, all the while following one stroller through it all. With every terrorized person we see, we always return to the stroller, which only heightens the suspense and pushes the action forward smoothly. If you've seen any sports movie or any movie involving any sort of journey or just any movie in general, then the idea of montage needs no explanation, and you can thank Eisenstein for that. The silent era and the cinema of attractions are sometimes forgotten in the overall canon of film history, being overshadowed by Citizen Kane and 2001 and others like it. But it's still vitally important because these filmmakers would lay the foundation so the Hitchcocks, the Truffauts, and the Kubricks could follow. But as much as Méliès, Griffith, and Eisenstein dominated the silent era, no one could have predicted the seismic shift that was coming to cinema just around the corner.
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing